What's up, y'all? Alvin here, and today I want to share a few techniques to help you catch more bass on the fly in challenging situations. All right, let's jump into it. So, we can't always fish under ideal circumstances, ideal conditions. You know, sometimes you have a trip that you plan far in advance. Maybe it's your only day off. Maybe you just really want to get out there and you got rain last night, the wind kicked up, or it's super hot. Should you just stay home? Probably not. I have actually had some of my best days or caught some of my best fish on some of the worst conditions. So let's break it down and talk about a few things that may help you catch fish or catch more fish or catch bigger fish when the conditions are not ideal. So typically the things that make it tough are wind, muddy or high water or high muddy water, and heat or cold. And we kind of treat those two, hot water, cold water, pretty similar. So let's start off first with wind. That's one of the things that seems to be more of a surprise. You know, a lot of the time you'll know typically before you go out if the water's going to be dirty or if it's going to be hot or if it's going to be cold. But a lot of times the wind can be surprising. Wind forecasts are notoriously wrong. So what do you do if it's howling out there? A couple of things to think about is maybe going up a size in rods, you know, like if you fish typically with a 5 or a 6 weight rod, if you have access to a 7 or an 8 weight rod, that's going to make casting in the wind a lot easier. Another thing you can do is think about your flies. So a big, bulky, wind resistant fly is going to be much harder to cast if there's a lot of wind. So you can scale down either the size of the fly or the type of fly. So instead of a big, bulky deer hair bug, maybe throw a foam popper or a streamer. Instead of a big, heavy streamer, maybe throw a lighter streamer and use a sink tip or a full sinking line. Especially if you're going to be throwing streamers and it's windy, a sinking or sink tip line is really helpful because even though they're a little bit more difficult to get out of the water on the initial cast, they do slice through the wind a lot easier because of the smaller diameter. So if I get out there and it's blowing hard, first thing I'm going to do is probably adjust my tackle. Now, there are some technique things that you can do as well that will make it easier to fish in the wind. A couple of things I like to do is one is use my sidearm cast and try to keep my line as close to the water as I can. So there's going to be a lot less wind down close to the water than there is, 15, 20 feet in the air. So keeping that cast tucked down low will help, as opposed to an overhead cast. And another thing, casting wise, sometimes you will have to cast into the wind. And if you cannot get yourself in a position where you can cast, maybe throw your back cast into the wind and your forward cast with the wind, what you can do is use your back cast as a forward cast. Now, this one does take a little bit more practice, and I'm still not super accurate with the back cast as a forward cast. But the thinking is instead of having your forward cast go toward your target here, you're going to use your back cast to go toward the target, and you're going to cast into the wind with your forward cast, which is usually stronger for most people. So I'm going to make my forward cast into the wind, even though this is not where I'm casting, and then I'm going to come back and try to throw my back cast as my presentation cast. So forward cast into the wind, back cast to your target. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but you can definitely make a much more powerful cast on your forward cast and use that to throw into the wind, and then your backhand cast to make your presentation. Now, that's one that I do remember when I first learned that technique, and it made a huge difference. It is also one that you should probably practice when it's not windy, because the thing is it is a little bit more difficult to aim that back cast. So use that forward cast into the wind, back cast to your target when it gets super windy. All right, so that's tip number one. If this is helping you out in any way, please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, that does help me out. So hopefully I'm helping you, you're helping me. All right. Okay, situation number 2, dirty water or dirty high water. This one is typically something that you can prepare for in advance. Usually the water is not going to rise dramatically or get dirty while you're out there. If it does, you should probably call it a day, because that may be the indication of rising water, which could lead to some dangerous situations, and we don't want to be dangerous out there. But if it's at a steady level and the water's dirty, the water's high, you can still catch fish. Mike Schultz, who owns Schultz Outfitters up in Michigan, amazing smallmouth fisherman, amazing smallmouth fishery. He says sometimes big fish make mistakes in dirty water. And I have seen this happen a couple of times. Sometimes, a personal bests were caught in really dirty water situations where we're thinking like, man, we're not going to catch anything. And all of a sudden, boom, there's the fish of the day or the fish of a lifetime. So it always pays to get out there if you can. But a couple things you can do when the water's dirty to help catch a few more fish, or maybe catch a fish, period, are things like using larger flies, darker colors. So you want to make it easier for the fish to see your fly, and darker colors will actually show up better in dirty water. Bigger flies are just going to make a bigger profile. They're going to make more noise, and the fish can feel that in their lateral line, and maybe that will get them to come over and, find your fly. So big flies, noisy flies, dark colored flies. Another thing, that if the water temperature is good, you may try a big top water. And that has been a game changer a couple of different times. When, the water's dirty, the fish can't really see the fly, but you have a big noisy top water on there and chugging that thing across the surface, and they can feel it and they'll come and find it. Sometimes it's pretty exciting because, maybe they miss it because they can't really see it. They're going on feel, and it takes a lot of patience to keep moving that fly if that fish is missing it, but just keep moving it until they get it in their mouth. Pretty exciting stuff. Another thing that you can do to increase your chances of catching fish in dirty water is just slowing the fly down. Whether it's a popper, you're making noise on the surface, give it a good pop or two, and then wait. Give the fish a chance to find the fly. If you're throwing a big, heavy, dark colored streamer and you're fishing down a little bit deeper, same thing, slower retrieve. Maybe make a couple of, erratic jerks to, put some vibrations in the water, but then stop it or slow it down. Give the fish a chance to find that fly. I've had some really good days, catching fish on big, dark colored flies in water that I couldn't see more than 6 inches, but somehow or another, the fish were able to find it. But it definitely made a difference when I slowed my retrieve down and just give them a chance to find it. All right. So if it's muddy, if it's high and muddy, don't be scared. Get out there, give it a try. All right. So number 3, let's talk a little bit about temperature. And for us, typically, it's going to be hot water, hot air, and sluggish fish. So there's a couple of things you can do. The most obvious thing is to be out there when the water temperature is the best. So first light, even before the sun comes up, and then later in the day when it cools off. Now, I prefer the early fishing because typically that's the lowest the water temperature is going to be for the entire day. So it's been cooling off at night. You know, the sun's not shining at night, so the water has a chance to cool off. So first light, it's typically going to be as cool as it's going to be for the day. And if the water temperature is the trigger, that's your best bet of getting on some fish, is going super early in the morning. The other thing is sometimes, though, it can be good late afternoon as the water starts to cool off. You should just try both, but you're probably not going to want to fish during the heat of the day. So a couple of other things that you can do when the water starts getting hot are similar to some of the things you would do when the water's dirty. So slow your retrieve down. The fish won't be as aggressive when the temperatures are high. So a slower retrieve, give them a chance, make some noise. And typically, things like making super accurate casts. So if you think there's a fish hiding behind that log or on top of that rock, you want to put it right in the strike zone, as close as you can get, so that that fish doesn't have to exert a lot of energy to grab that fly. So like we say when we're red fishing, sometimes you just have to feed it to them. So same thing, maybe the flip side for colder water. We didn't mention that initially, but colder water can also be a challenge. And then you're going to want to get out there when the water temperature is the warmest, typically from the middle of the day till the end of the day. So the water temperature will rise throughout the day, and a lot of times you will see the fish get more active as that water temperature rises. Same thing with flies and fly patterns and fly retrieve or fly action. You want to slow stuff down. You probably want to get a little bit deeper. The fish are usually going to be hunkered down when the water's cold, and you want to just, once again, try to get your fly in the strike zone. Don't expect the fish to chase the fly down. They're going to be sluggish, so you want to make it as easy as you possibly can for them to eat that fly. Now, here's a bonus tip. When conditions are horrible and you're thinking there's no way I'm going to catch any fish, you can try all this stuff that I just spoke about in this video, but really a lot of it is mental. So you have to believe that it's possible to catch fish. Otherwise, you should just stay home. You should probably just stay home all the time if you don't really believe that you can catch fish. Tough conditions can actually make you a much better angler because you have to work a little bit harder to figure it out. You're more likely to try things that are kind of outside the norm, and I have discovered some fly patterns, some techniques, and things that I wouldn't have tried on perfect conditions. I've tried when conditions were not good, and I've figured things out that have allowed me to catch more fish when the conditions are good. So you just got to go. If you don't go, you don't know.